Right, good morning members and anyone who may be watching us online. Welcome to this, which is our last meeting of this Common Rights Away Committee for this session. I will start with apologies for absence.
Apologies received from Councillor Lorraine Patrick, and Sean Parsons is acting as a substitute.
Welcome, Sean. Declarations of interest. Members know the format. None. Thank you. Public questions on the applications.
None received.
And member questions.
None received.
No. Okay. Then that moves us swiftly on to agenda item 6, which is the application for a modification order for an additional length of public footpath connecting Station Road to Bushcombe Lane in Woodmancote Parish, Tewkesbury District. Your pages 11 to 54. I realised I forgot to take the minutes at 2, didn't I? In my keenness to get to the application.
Okay.
Sorry, members. Yeah, the minutes are pages 1 to 10. Can I have a proposition, please, that we accept the minutes of the previous meeting? Thanks, Carol and Graham. Thank you. Sorry about that, members. Moving on too quickly. Okay. Presentation, and it's Jackie Harris. Morning, Jackie.
Morning, councillors. The application before you today is for an additional length of public footpath to be added to the definitive map and statement in Woodmancote Parish. Simon, could I ask for you go to the first slide, please?
Can you see that,
yes.
Jackie?
Could you go to the next slide, please?
Yeah.
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 So
Let me
we can't.
Just take a minute.
Yeah, it is
Just
back.
Thank you. That's the one. Slide 1. Okay. Okay. So
Start going. Bear with me.
I can see slide JH1.
Then it might jump to.
Right.
Let's see how it goes.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay. You all right for me to go? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Right. Okay. So the application that's before you is
dropped out Citrix. Bear with me a sec.
I think there's a delay, Jackie, with what's relaying from
It
Simon's
was working
end, so
perfectly. We
I think
tested it.
you can carry on, Jackie.
okay. Okay. So that the application then.
I've got. I think it's back now, isn't it?
Okay. Do you want to see if it works?
Yeah,
Going to slide JH2, please.
Okay, there you are.
Yeah. Simon, can you go to the next slide? That's it. Great. Okay.
Right.
So the application then, let's look at the footpath that is claimed in greater detail. Could you go back to JH2, please? Thanks. Okay, so the path that is claimed runs between points A to B and is shown with a black broken line.
Yeah, and
It
you've
connects to.
I'm just getting the
We've got you.
map on there as
Yeah. Right. It connects two existing public highways, Station Road at point A and Bushcombe Close at point B. Now, just for the purpose of a photo,
Yeah.
just for the purposes of the presentation, the report later on, there is Bushcombe Lane, the lane that runs parallel to the claim path and just north to it. Yes, that will also come into this report as one of the reasons for this this application.
Yeah, that's fine, Jack. Yeah,
The applicant, who is a lady called Mrs. Spragg, submitted her application on the 12th of June 2006. The landowner is unknown, and there are a total of 5 public path evidence forms submitted by 5 individuals in support of this application. So we can see the path there. Now, Bushcombe Close is a development of 20 bungalows for which planning permission was secured by the developer Leckhampton Estates Limited in 1959.
There's a little delay there.
This report will show that the developer set out a footpath for the use of purchasers of these bungalows. Land Registry does not record today any unregistered land, even though the developer set out this path in the vicinity of the claimed way. So it appears that the path has been incorporated over the years into the curtilage of adjacent properties. If I could ask you to go to the next slide, please, Simon. Thank you.
Now, yeah, doing that now, Jackie.
Yeah, I can see it. It's fine. Yes. So what I've done here on this slide is I've coloured in the various properties, both north and south, that abut the claimed path. And the reason I've put this slide up now is because there have been a couple, 3 in fact, planning applications that were successful. They received permission and may have been resulted in the path being incorporated within their properties. The first one is Waterside, the property Waterside adjacent to point A, which abuts or fronts onto Station Road. That received planning permission in 1992 for a 2-storey extension to provide enlarged living accommodation. The property behind that, near point B, number 11 Bushcombe Close, received planning permission in 2016 for front and rear extensions, loft conversion and vehicle access and drive. However, it's a 3rd planning application that received permission that was submitted by the owners of Belden House. Now that's the property that is shown just north of the claimed path, and it's shaded in the lighter red colour. So it sits between Bushcombe Lane and the claimed path. Now that application was what appears to have motivated the applicant to submit this claim. The applicant stated that the owners intend to use the footpath, which they do not own, for access to a new bungalow in their back garden. Now, the 2 planning permissions received by Waterside and number 11, Bushcombe Close, were actually implemented. The one that Belden House received, and they have got permission, has not been implemented to date. Now, a second concern, which may have added to the reason that the application was made for this claim path, is shown on the next slide. Simon, could you go to the JH3B? Thank you. Now, this is Bushcombe Lane. So if you remember from that first slide, it sits parallel to the claim path and just north of it. And the concern here, shared by local people, is that there is no pavement along Bushcombe Lane. and they have fears regarding the safety of those using it. Now, as you'll expect, I actually went out last year on 10th of November 2020 to take some photos of this path, but photos were also taken shortly after receipt of the claim on the 29th of June 2006. So the next 5 photos will show pictures taken in 2006 and then by me last year. If you could go to the next slide, please, Simon. Thank you. Now, the next 3 slides, all taken in 2006, unfortunately, are all of the Bushcombe Close or Point B end. They're not taken on Station Road. And what I'll draw to your attention and ask you to just focus on is the lamppost and the manhole cover in this picture. This picture's been taken from Bushcombe Close and it's looking towards north, towards Bushcombe Lane. The claim path is somewhere on the left of that, behind the lamppost. If you go to the next slide, please, Simon. Thank you. Again, keep your eye on the lamppost and the manhole cover. It will make sense in a few minutes. We can see here that there is a wall adjacent to the lamppost, just extends a little bit further, and we can see that the hedge goes directly up to the street lamp. Can you go to the next photo, please? That's a photo that's been taken of the claim path at that time in 2006, again from the Bushcombe Close end. So the property you can see to the right is number 11. Can you go to the next photo, please? Right, these are the 2 photos that I took myself last year, and there is one of each end of the path. You'll see from the hedge, it's impossible. You cannot actually walk this path. It's completely inaccessible. So what we're looking at here is Station Road. This is Point A, and the property that you can see there to the right is Waterside. So they had that extension in 1992 to enlarge their living accommodation, and somewhere there is a path. Could you go to the next slide, please, Simon? And this is the reason that I asked you to just keep your sort of in your head the picture of that street lamp and the manhole cover. You could see from there, from the 2006 photos, do you remember the wall just extended just slightly beyond that lamppost, and the hedge abutted right up to it. And in 2016, the owner here of this bungalow got permission to, amongst other things, create a vehicle access and drive. The result really of these photos, what I'm trying to show, is that somewhere along there, between those 2 points, there is a path, the claimed path. Where exactly it is, we don't know. Whose land it's sitting, we don't know. But clearly there has been some encroachment over the years. So let's turn to the documentary evidence. We had a report commissioned of Gloucestershire Archives, and that's attached as background paper to this report. The documents you'd expect us to check and inspect, such as enclosure, tithe, finance, ordnance survey, showed no indication of the claim path at all. We further looked at the papers with regard to the public path process, which resulted in the definitive map and statement showing the legal record of public rights of way that was drawn up under the National Parks and Access to the Countryside Act 1949. An inspection of all the 4 stages shows that the path was not claimed at any stage. The only document we have is actually what you're looking at here. It's a conveyance set out in 1960 between the developer and the owners of plot number 11, which turned out to be number 11 Bushcombe Close. Now, although that is the case, it was actually the applicant, Mrs. Spragg, who lives at number 18 Bushcombe Close, that submitted this, and she advised that it formed part of her deeds to the house. Now, I carried out a random check at Land Registry of the titles of 8 of the original 20 bungalows, and they revealed that there were similar records of conveyance made in circa 1960-61 between the developer Leckhampton Estates Limited and the original purchasers. And that is actually set out within paragraph, the wording is, I hope you can read this because it is very small. In point 2, on the first page of that conveyance, if I can just briefly read it, it says the vendors have either already sold and conveyed or under contract for sale and conveyance to purchasers thereof of certain of the sold plots with the rights to use the said roads, drains, sewers, pipes and cables, but subject to covenants on the part of each such purchaser to observe certain stipulations similar in all respects to the stipulations set out in the second schedule hereto, is being intended that all purchasers of plots forming part of the said building estate should enter into similar covenants. So that confirms that, and that all of the purchasers of the 20 bungalows received a similar conveyance at the same time. The whole of this conveyance is held as a background paper and can be seen. The second schedule that it refers to there is merely 4 points with regard to the purchaser's responsibility to maintain fences, one dwelling house, stipulates the purpose of the dwelling house, and requires the purchasers to contribute a fair and rateable proportion of the expense of repairing and maintaining sewers and drains until they are adopted by the local authority. So that's all Schedules 2 says. So I don't want you to get, concerned about something being missed or not said. So we can infer then, we can say with some confidence, some assurance, that the rights, easements and restricted covenants conveyed to the purchasers of plot number 11 as subject to this conveyance were similarly conveyed to the other 19 purchasers of properties within the Bushcombe development. Now, the conveyance is going to be detailed over the next 3 slides. And it includes a plan as well. Within the report, the paragraphs that detail and discuss the conveyance are held between paragraphs 9.3 and 9.11 of my report and appendices JH5A to D, which we will be looking at on the screen now. Now, this screen, JH5, could you go back to the other one, please, Simon? JH5A and B are actually pages 1 and 3 of the conveyance. And I've only done that because there are 2 footpaths that are referenced within this conveyance, and these 2 pages detail them. Page 2 of the conveyance is a couple of slides away. So if you see it's not making sense, that's the reason for it on the bottom and top of the pages. So the first footpath is referenced on these 2 pages. And the initial wording to this, the explanation or the declaration, is found at the bottom of page 1 under the statement that starts off, "Now this deed witnesseth." And I'm going to read it from my report. It says, the vendors, in consideration of the sum of £500 paid by the purchasers to the vendors, the receipt whereof the vendors hereby acknowledge, the vendors as beneficial owners hereby convey unto the purchasers all that the land described in part 1 of the first schedule. Now, page 3, which adjoins it, I've highlighted the relevant section of part 1 of the first schedule. And it says there, and together with the right in common of all other entitled to the like right of user of the footpath running alongside plot 11 on the said plan leading from the estate road to station road, subject to the purchasers contributing a fair proportionate share towards the cost of maintenance thereof. The plan attached to the conveyance identifies plot number 11 by orange marker. Could you go to the next screen, please, Simon? Okay, so this is the plan that is attached to that conveyance. So plot number 11 is identified, is outlined by orange marker. The alignment of this footpath subject to this easement is consistent with the route of the claimed path. And the wording used in relation to it suggests that it was meant to be private. It was a private easement conveyed to the purchasers of properties within the development who would be required to share the cost of its maintenance. Not until it was adopted by the local authority, as it refers to later on in Schedule 2 with regard to the cables and pipes. It's just that they were required to maintain it and contribute towards its future maintenance. So this does seem to indicate that it was a private easement of a footpath for the use of purchasers of the 20 bungalows. And this is acknowledged by the applicant. She wrote in her letter when she submitted this conveyance to us, she wrote, "The footpath was clearly assured by Leckhampton Estates in favour of each and every one of the future owners of their development site in Bushcombe Close, in the first instance in perpetuity." So this is the route of the claim path, and it seems to be private. However, the conveyance referenced a second footpath, which again the vendor would initially be responsible for setting up. If you could go to the next slide, please, Simon. This is actually page 2 of the conveyance. In point 4, it says, "The vendors hereby covenant with the purchasers that they will make up the road and footpath on which the land shown edged red on the plan annexed hereto abuts to the standard required for adoption by the local authority." This annexed plan that it refers to is not part of the conveyance that I've received. However, within our own records, we have a stopping up order dated the 25th of January 1960, which was executed under the Town and Country Planning Act 1947. If you go to the next slide, please, Simon. And although the title of this order is a stopping up order, it actually permitted the diversion of public footpath AWO 12 in Woodmancote Parish. The order specified that the new highway shall be provided in accordance with the reasonable requirements of the County Council of Gloucester by Leckhampton Estates Limited. It further said the cost of providing the new highway shall be paid by the said Leckhampton Estates Limited. Parts 1 and 2 of the schedule describe both the highway to be stopped up and the new highway as a footpath. The order plan that you can see here shows the new footpath running along the length of Bushcombe Close. That's the bit, the line coloured blue. So it's reasonable to suggest that this order relates to the footpath noted under point 4 of the conveyance, for which the developer would initially be responsible for setting out a path to a certain standard before its adoption by the local authority on behalf of the public. Again, although you're just looking at the plan there, the order plan, I have got the whole of the order, if you wish to see it, held as a background paper to this report. So the 1960 conveyance, therefore, referenced 2 separate footpaths, both of which were initially to be set out by the developer. One was to be adopted by the Highway Authority, this public, and the other, along the alignment of the claim path, was provided for the purchasers of properties within the Bushcombe development, for which they would all be subsequently share the ongoing maintenance costs. And this would make it a private footpath. So going on to consultations, As you'd expect, again, a consultation was carried out when we received the application, and it triggered some correspondence with us. One of the comments that came back was from a Mr. Quirk, who at that time lived at number 11 Bushcombe Close. He said, in his deeds and the other owners of properties along Bushcombe Close deeds, it says that the path should be maintained by them. He added that nobody had used the claim path in 36 years, and it was now very narrow due to houses on Bushcombe Close encroaching onto it. At the same time as this consultation was carried out, a public rights of way landowner evidence form was sent under a covering letter of the 1st of February 2007 to all of the householders affected and abutting the claim path. This would include the householders in Bushcombe Lane, Station Road and Bushcombe Close. 5 responses were received from the householders at Grayswood, Green Hills, Belden House and Cornerways, all along Bushcombe Lane. And a 5th one was received from number 11, Bushcombe Close. And again, these are held as background papers and can be read if you wish me to forward them to you. I've included some of the comments in this report, but essentially this is not, this evidence form is not evidence of use. It's for the landowner to declare and show his overt actions, to declare his lack of intention to dedicate the path. The questions that are involved in this landowner evidence form include, does the route adjoin your land? All but one said yes. I'm getting a funny feedback. The second question is, do you believe this way to be public? All 5 said no. Have you seen or been aware of people using the path? All but one said no. The one that said yes said it was closed by Waterside in the late 70s. Have you required people to ask permission? All said no. Have you stopped anyone from using the path? All responded no. Have you told anyone that the path is private? Again, response is no. Have you ever erected signs stating that the way is private? Again, no. And have you ever obstructed the way? Again, or no. So that's just to give you a flavour of the people that were abutting the path. The path, again, I have to reiterate, was set out originally by the landowner, by the developer, but it's been incorporated. So again, this is why I say we don't really know who the landowner is today, but the people that lie adjacent to it, those were those comments, whose houses abut it, those were their responses. So let's consider the user evidence. As you'll know, the statutory test by which we analyse the user evidence is found in section 31, subsections 1 and 2 of the Highways Act 1980. Subsection 1 says that where a way over any land other than a way of such character that use of it by the public could not give rise at common law to any presumption of dedication has been actually enjoyed by the public as of right, which means without force, secrecy or permission, without interruption for a full period of 20 years, the way is deemed to have been dedicated as a highway, unless there is sufficient evidence that there was no intention during that period to dedicate it. Subsection 2 clarified the 20 years and stated that the 20 years over which the user evidence would be analysed is calculated retrospectively from the date that the right of the public to use the way was challenged or brought into question. So that's the date we first need to establish. We need to know the date of challenge. Now, the bringing into question or challenge of the public's right to use the path was considered by Lord Denning in Ferry versus Southampton County Council 1956. He said, in order for the rights of the public to have been brought into question, the landowner must challenge it by some means sufficient to bring it home to the public that he is challenging their right to use the way so that they might be appraised of the challenge and have a reasonable opportunity of meeting it. We saw at the start of this report, this presentation, that one of the applicant's reasons for submitting the application was because of a neighbour's planning application, that was Belden House, for which she alleged the owners intend to use the public footpath, which they do not own, for access to a new bungalow in their back garden. Mr. Parkin, the owner of Belden House, used his landowner evidence form to refute this application, and he appended a statement explaining that he purchased 14 foot of a surplus 18 foot of land to the rear of and between the properties Grayswood, Belden House and Green Hills on Bushcombe Lane and Waterside on Station Road, directly from the developer in 1963. This left a 4-foot strip of land which the developers were obliged to retain for the footpath in accordance with the deeds of the Bushcombe Close properties. If he's not the owner of the land over which the path crossed, then the applicant's allegation would not constitute a bringing into question or challenge of the public's right to use the path. The gradual incorporation of this claim path into adjacent gardens means that we don't have a date which can be attributed as a challenge to public use. So in such cases, Section 69 of the Natural Environment and Rural Communities Act 2006 provides that the date of the application itself can be used as the date of challenge. And therefore, as the application was submitted in 2006, the retrospective 20-year qualifying period that we will analyse for this report is 1986 to 2006. So perhaps we could go to JH7, please, Simon. Thank you. Oh, no.
It's just hold in there a minute. Take a moment. All right.
Okay.
Stop there. It will go in a minute. So I'm just going to go in and share again.
Get a
Jacket.
Okay.
Just because the presentation had just jammed at that point. So let's have another go.
JH7.
Give me a sec.
Thank you. Yes, you got it. Thank you. Right. So, as I said at the start of the application, we had 5 public path evidence forms completed by 5 individual members of the public in support of this application. One of which was actually submitted by the applicant herself. The evidence dates back to 1960, and it's all pedestrian on foot. Now, the summary of public path evidence forms can be found in the report as Appendix JH8. However, I'd like to just focus on this slide, which is the bar chart of users. In response to question 2 of the public path evidence form, have you used the above path? The applicant herself actually responded no. We cannot therefore include her PPEF in the overall number of claimed users of the path. There's no statutory minimum level of user required to show sufficient use to raise a claim of statutory dedication. Use should have been by a sufficient number of people to show that it was used by the public, and this can vary from case to case. When considering sufficiency of user, however, we can be guided by case law, Dorset 1999, where the judge considered that although the evidence in front of him within 5 user evidence forms was truthful, it was insufficient to satisfy the statutory test. It follows, therefore, that the user evidence of the remaining 4 individuals subject to this application would also fail. Now, when analysing the user evidence, I found that...
It's going.
Is there a problem? No.
Go in a minute.
I can stay on this slide, you don't have to do anything else. When analysing the user evidence, I found that it failed 3 further aspects of the statutory test. If I can draw your attention to the slide, JH7, the bar chart of use, when considering the length of claimed use of the path by the remaining 4 individuals over the statutory qualifying period of 1986 to 2006, we can see that it falls short of the required 20 years necessary for a claim of statutory presumed dedication. The 4 individuals claimed use of the path from 1960 or 61, i.e. start of the development, and continued for at most 12 years until and it continued for at most 12 years until 1972, when it appears that alternative paths started to be used and the claimed path as a result was encroached upon and fenced off. So the first aspect that it fails on of the test is it doesn't meet the 20 years, the minimum of 20 years.
Got there.
Thanks. Yeah, it's fine. I can see it.
Sorry, let's go back in. We've got it.
Are you all right, Simon? Can I carry on? The second aspect that it fails is looking at whether the individual, the remaining users that supplied the user evidence, can be considered to be members of the public use. In considering this, Ross Crail, a barrister, wrote a report for the Rights of Way Law Review on this very subject. She stated, user must have been by the public. That does not mean that users must come from all over the country. In the nature of things, they will usually be drawn from the local community, especially in the case of a claimed footpath or bridleway. But they must represent a wider cross-section of the public than just the owners or occupiers of nearby properties and their visitors, the postman, the dust cart, and so forth. The remaining 4 individuals who supplied public path evidence forms for this application all live in Bushcombe Close, as did the applicant. Their use would thus fail the public aspect of the statutory test. The third aspect that it fails, and really the second one leads neatly into this, is that for a claim to give rise to a presumption of dedication, user must have been as of right. That's without force, secrecy or permission. The random check carried out at Land Registry included a search of the titles of the bungalows belonging to the applicant, Mrs. Spragg, and the 4 individuals who claimed use of the path, Mrs. George, Mr. Jewell, Mr. Elwood and Mrs. Axton. A record of conveyance circa 1960 was found to exist between Leckhampton Estates Limited, the developer, and the original owners of all but Mrs. Axton's property. With regard to Mrs. Axton's property title, Land Registry only held a caution against the property register, but her response to question 8D of the public path evidence form, have you ever been given permission to use the path, was yes, by Leckhampton Estates, who owned the land and the path and built the 20 bungalows in Bushcombe Close. This suggests that her property was also subject to a similar conveyance. Mr. Jewell responded to the same question, simply saying, yeah. Good. Responded yes. And Mrs. George responded to the same question. Permission was understood as the land was purposefully left by the builders for the then 20 bungalows here. The private easement for the footpath alongside number 11, which corresponds with the claim path within the conveyance, thus had the effect of rebutting the as of right test, because the use was by a private easement, a form of permission. Thus their use was by right. So where an application fails the test for statutory dedication under Section 31 of the Highways Act 1980, rights may have been dedicated at common law. This requires consideration of whether use of the route by the public and the actions of the landowner have been of such a nature that dedication of a right-of-way could be inferred. No prescribed period of use is required at common law. The length of time required to allow such an inference to be drawn depends on all the circumstances. The burden of proof lies with the person claiming the rights. Regrettably, this application must fail at common law also because the 1960 conveyance, as we've said, granted a private easement to the householders to use the claim path. Their use was therefore at common law, as with statutory, a form of easement, private easement, thus by right and not as of right. And further, as this report has already shown, the user evidence has been submitted by householders living along Bushcombe Close, which would not constitute use by the public. As such, there can be no implied dedication of the claim route at common law either. If members agree that on the balance of probabilities the claim path cannot reasonably be alleged to subsist by statutory or inferred dedication, then they must direct that no order is made to record the claim route as a public footpath. And my recommendation, therefore, is that no order be made to add the claimed footpath to the legal record of public rights of way on the basis that the user evidence fails to meet the criteria required under the statutory test and at common law. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for keeping going, Jackie. I spotted one thing in there, but I'll let members ask questions first, and then I'll take you back just for a point of clarification, because we are being recorded on something that you said.
Right.
It's only one word, but I'll do it when members have asked their questions. I'm looking for any raised hand. Oh, I haven't got one. Can I ask you my question then, Jackie?
Yeah.
When you started your presentation on JH5A, this is going to sound terribly pedantic, but at 2, where you said the vendors, you said thereof certain of the sold plots, where in the text it says said plots. It's just one word, but on the tape it kind of you said sold. It's just one word.
I'm sorry. It was such small writing. I was finding it quite hard to read the exact words. What I will say is that it's transcribed in the report fully, and I have got the whole thing as background paper. So my apologies if I've put in a word that shouldn't have been there.
Phil, before we go on, there's a lot of background noise. Can people mute if
Yeah, it's. I think it's Simon that's having particular problems. I don't think it's members. I think it's Simon, and I'll get him. Is it? Yeah.
Did you all get that? Was that clear enough? Did you all get my response? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions from any other members? If not, I'm going to look for a proposition. Simon and Dr. John. I'll take Simon first.
Yes, I propose that we go with the officer's recommendation.
Dr. John, I presume
Yeah, I'm very happy to second that. I think it's one of the most clear-cut applications we've ever had.
Yes, yeah, for sure. Anyone else wishing to say anything? Then normally, because there's so few of us, I'll take it that if no one raises a hand, we're all content with the proposal. Thank you.
I think that's reasonable, Chair.
Yeah. Oh, Simon. Yeah, thank you. Okay. Then that is the determination. Moving swiftly on then through. Thank you, Jackie, for taking us through what was something quite complicated with easements, etc. Going on to item number 7, which is public questions. I'm looking at Joe. I don't believe. No.
No, received.
And item 8, anything to do with members' questions in relation to this committee? No.
None received.
No, right. Well, that brings us to the end of the meeting. I'm not going to let people go without saying a few thank yous. First, I did it planning last week, but I'll start with Dr. John. Obviously, we know after what seems like purgatory to him, I would imagine he's stepping down after such a long service. John Payne, I think, indicated at council last week that you're stepping down, John. And Simon, I picked up at planning last week. Are you in fact stepping down?
Yes, and this is one committee out of all of them that I will very much miss. I've loved it. My only regret is that since we've been going on virtual meetings, we haven't been getting the hard copies of maps. And I must admit, I'm a little bit of a geek. I do love the maps, so that is something I will really miss, as well as meeting everyone on the committee.
Well, thank you all. I've enjoyed the committee as well, and I must say a thank you to the officers. Always come to us very well briefed and very, very well researched. I wouldn't want to do it for a living, so congratulations to you on what you put in front of us. And finally, obviously, thanks to Joe, always keeping us all well organised and well informed. So, yeah. To those that are leaving, goodbye and thank you, and to those that are seeking to come back, hopefully we'll see you in the new council. Thank you very much.